Jane, I baptize thee in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost.
Jane is my daughter, and in a way this film is about her and about myself. For I brought her down from London, where she was born, to be christened in the Forest of Dean, where I grew up. It's a story of my discovery of things here to respect, and of my anxiety about the kind of Forest of Dean she will see as she grows older. That's Margaret, my wife, born here like myself. And my mother, proud of her first grandchild. And my father, who has spent most of his working life in the pits of the Forest of Dean. For the green forest has a deep black heart beneath its sudden hills, pushing up into slag heaps and grey little villages clustering around the coal. Perhaps it even shapes the character of the people who live in this fortress, which rises so dramatically from the valleys of the Severn and Wye, two rivers dividing it from Wales to the west and England to the east. This is a farming area too, but the farms are small for the most part, kept by people who are in every sense part of the district. Mr. Collins, for instance, will drink in the same pubs and talk with the same accent as the miners around him, for the forest has escaped the bitter class divisions of many other parts of England, because the Crown owns most of the land here, and there are few landlords. Many of the miners keep a few sheep or pigs themselves. Free grazing rights were granted centuries ago to the people of this district, helping to produce that strong local sense of being foresters. Len Jones, for example, is a miner from Yorkley on the Severn side, and often finds his sheep grazing near my village on the Wye side of the forest, more than 8 miles from his home. He'll describe himself as a forester to outsiders, and proudly so. But within the forest, though, he'll maintain even more vigorously that he's a Yorkley man. In the woods, you may also find free miners, as they're called, like these brothers who work this pit alone. Men born in the district who've worked in a local pit are entitled by ancient law to dig their own small mines wherever they choose, another tradition belonging to the villages of the Forest of Dean. The villages cluster almost on top of each other in some parts, sometimes as little as 500 yards apart. Just by my house are 6 villages. Eastpatch on the top, below it Bicknor Street. Joyford in the valley, and above it Edge End. Then the biggest of the lot, Berry Hill, with Short Standing, each with an almost aggressive sense of their own differences. I was born in this house, where Berry Hill fades into Joyford, but can still call itself Berry Hill. I went to school with the other Berry Hill children, and to Salem Chapel at Berry Hill for Sunday school lessons, not Joyford Chapel just down the road.
It was in Bethany that one day some friends of Jesus heard he was coming to see them, and they planned to make a special party to welcome him. Many people were invited. I wonder who would be there.
Mary and Martha.
Chapel and pub are tangled up in my memories. We'd play on the wall, waiting for the grown-ups inside. Sometimes the band would play, and I was proud that Dad should be among them, blowing the silver baritone I'd helped to polish. His uniform was the most exciting thing in the house. Mum always played the piano at weekends and pub harvest festivals, and sometimes people would clap as she came into the club room, and I'd sit listening, blushing with triumph. And perhaps afterwards, Dad's friends would come crowding into our house for a party.
I'm only painting a little out with sunshine. Although things may look bright, they'll all turn out.
My sister and I would creep out of bed to listen at the top of the stairs, too thrilled for mere sleep.
With sunshine.
Soon, though, I went to the local grammar school in Colford and almost imperceptibly began to grow away from this tight and secure world. Doing homework like this boy in a crowded and noisy room helped fling up a growing but confused exasperation with those around me. I began to read with a gluttonous desperation, eager to discover new ideas and revel in insights and feelings I'd never dreamt of before. Everything I saw began to take on depressing and drab colors. The forest came to narrow and constrict itself around me. The fortress became a prison. Even at home, with my own parents, I felt a shamefaced irritation with the tempo of a pickle jar style of living. I felt as much remorseful hate as love for the miners, squatting for the bus, measuring them by their dirty caps and mufflers. I loathed the thought of lives and minds warped by the dirt, clay, and mud of such filthy working conditions. I could see no virtues in grubbing in the earth for a living. Looking at the band, I saw only the cloth caps and suits amongst the uniforms I'd once admired, changing it from shining silver and village pride to a shambles, blustering through a tatty parody of the kind of music I felt beyond me. I couldn't stand the old men muttering inanely to each other, shaped by toil and virtues I couldn't grasp and utterly incapable of responding to my own naive dreams. And I writhed under the gossip of village life, where it seemed to me nothing I did could possibly escape ignorant and sometimes vicious comment. Even the parties which had excited me collapsed under the boring, repetitive chatter, the stifling, heaped-up layers of familiarity, and the imprisoning, clogging intimacy. God, the talk about nothing. These hands and faces seemed all wrong to me, crippled from inside. I couldn't imagine a poem meaning anything to them, or these people meaning anything to a poet.
There be none of beauty's daughters with a magic like thee, and like music on the waters is thy sweet voice to me. When, as if its sound were causing the charmed ocean's pausing, the waves lie still and gleaming, and the lulled winds seem dreaming.
And I thought then that this miserable pile of dull villages could not possibly be reconciled with great art, great thought, vital emotions, and classical music. Oh, I wanted to escape. I yearned to get away. Well, I was lucky. I did get away. By a process of examination and accident, I got to Oxford, and I was able to relax and spread myself in what seemed to be a far more fertile and richer world than the Forest of Dean. And now, after a number of years, I find myself back with a shiny new degree and looking at these drab, untidy old houses which once seemed to me to be the very expression of all my dislike and frustration. And I find myself wondering. I realize now it was too easy to sense the ugly and restricted. But somehow the interior of Mrs. Marford's house manages to convey a total way of life. The heavily expressive vases, crockery, and furniture itself seem mixed up with the people, almost parts of the family or limbs of the person. This room is not a collection of things to be judged, placed, and measured, but a room to be lived in by people who are not anxious or nervous about the way they ought to live. Now, of course, I'm glad that Mum has a washing machine. Glad that the forest has such splendid new housing estates, and more people can afford to have cars and enjoy a greater sense of personal freedom. I'm glad the old school my father and I went to is closed and replaced by a modern one. I'm hopeful that as the squalid old mines close, more bright, new, airy factories are coming to the Forest of Dean to take their place. And of course I'm glad that we're all living and eating better, that we're so very much more prosperous. But I get worried when the synthetic and can take over so completely. Now, when I walk down the street at home, full of all the changes that are coming to the Forest of Dean, I feel I'm being got at in some way. For all around us, commerce and the acquisitive society creates a dazzling but somehow more superficial way of life, making us think only of possessions and the status they bring, ogling and imprisoning the consumer, driving us to buy, buy, buy. Even in the old village store, our dress itself is marking off subtle gradations of status within the same village. The county-style cap, the suede boot, and the stiletto heel are the new symbols of this self-deception. Our paper shop has become the bookshop, seed packets and all. Tawdry novelettes make even literacy something to be fouled by the rhythm of the cash register and the emptiness of pop music.
Fish cookery can be full of all sorts of unrealized traps for the inexperienced hostess who wants to show her familiarity with the right as opposed to the wrong way of serving her guests their meal.
Wonderful that nice new homes like Kath and Brian's are, so much better than the old cottages. I feel that here possessions seem to be separate from the person, badges of rank almost, forged by the copywriters. And all this material achievement I want so much seems to crumble away the individuality of the people I know. My cousin Marlene is a teenager with opportunities and freedoms that would have seemed wonderful 10 years ago. But for all these gains, there's a sense in which the very word teenager has become a commercial word. Marlene's father, Harvey Harris, knows how the Foresters are reacting to these new forces.
You start with something, you always try to improve on what you've got. That gradually grows and grows, and the other person behind you does the same thing. So in the end, everybody is trying to be on the same level, in effect. The woman next door has got a washing machine. I haven't got one. Well, I better get a washing machine. And you get it whether you can afford it or not. The same with a car. If you wanted a car, you get it whether you could afford it or not, if you thought it was essential to be as good as someone else. To me, it's progress. And I think that without these things, that, well, it just wouldn't be living today.
Young Foresters live by this creed to a great extent, with an uncertain but strident pride. This is Tony Baldwin, a friend of mine who went to school with me, lives at Berry Hill, but works here in Gloucester, as does Margaret, his girlfriend. Young people like Tony feel that the breakdown of the tight community is giving them their opportunities. These ambitions have a natural buoyancy, but are channeled off into mere status-seeking by all the pressures and demands of our status-riddled society.
When I get married this year, there's never been any question of our staying in the forest. I think the social life here is too narrow. To me, social status is important as income. And it's the modern thing. I want to reach the new middle classes by my own work and achieve the new patterns, like drinks to offer your guests and small parties, and perhaps an occasional dinner out in a good class restaurant. I think this status is an attitude of mind, a modern attitude of mind, because a docker, say, can earn £30 a week and still be a working class in his habits and outlook. But someone like myself or my friends can earn far less and yet still have a different, broader outlook, a different status. And this is the thing young people miss in the forest. We want to be progressive, in fact.
Progress comes heavy-footed to this old forest pub as well. The landlord has great hopes for future changes, but I wish they didn't sound so much like the death rather than the birth of something valuable.
They're moving now. All this place is coming down. The longest public bar in the Forest of Dean. Car park outside. continental beer garden at the back, a very nice lounge where I'll be able to attract the passing trade, the tourists, and serve them salmon and mayonnaise and that sort of thing, cold coffee style, and also create a better atmosphere from a local family trade point of view, you see. Family to come along and have social amenities and that sort of thing, and to give everybody a chance of having the conditions which they should have in the Foster Dean. But this is going to be a modern pub with every convenience. There's a ladies' toilets inside, and I'm sure it'll be a very, very attractive place.
I know from my own experience that Dad's friends don't want to lose the new things nor the old dignities. They're bewildered by the disintegration of their community.
For the gifts of nature are the very expression of God's generosity and love to us here on earth. We all know the saying, blessed is the land between the two rivers. And that could mean all of us here in the Forest of Dean between the Severn and Wye. We can hear one of our old foresters saying, as he looks at this banner, we be like the child up there, both blessed and in danger. Steady, old buddy, careful. So the voice of God comes to us. Let us heed his advice and thank him for everything. Now shall we sing the hymn number...
The chapel was firmly rooted in a whole way of life whose values are now so cheapened that every part of it suffers.
When I look around these empty seats, I wonder sometimes whether it's worthwhile carrying on. And I say to myself, well, I suppose someone wanted sometimes. We used to get good speakers, and no one came. Now we have difficulty in getting speakers. It used to be a great social occasion to come to service, but now there are so many things on, they don't seem to want to come.
They don't come to the rugby ground either. Just a few years ago, the touchlines were so crowded with shouting people that I was sick with fear and pride before my first game, for the whole village would replay the match throughout the next week. Now we've difficulty in mustering a team, let alone supporters.
"15 yards outside the 25.
But look at those who do watch. Look at the difference, and then ask which is the better.
Let the ball in! Come down!
Mackay is there, it's try. The try, I think, by Arthur Smith. It was. No, the referee's whistle has gone and he's blown up for something.
I'm now as proud of our band as I was as a child. My uncle founded the band about 50 years ago at a time of industrial oppression to provide a means of self-expression for the people here. But now it's there to me as a way in which we can keep so many local values in the very teeth of ADMAS itself. But I'm afraid the band's importance in the village has declined. The carnivals and chapel galas have gone, and the band no longer plays on the rugby field.
Right. Let's put Devon Fantasy away now then, shall we? There's a new test piece, as you see, in front of you. Now, this is the Neapolitan Suite for Brass. And if we're going to make a good show with this, you really have got to be Italians. There's no doubt about that. You must think of flashing eyes, flashing teeth, mustachios, bold, swaggering Italians. Let's see if you can do it in this number one, shall we? Here we go.
Well, I practically gave all my life to the band, and I continue to do so as long as I'm able. The band is the soul of the village, and I think myself you get comradeship among the band, and I should like I'd like for people to appreciate it more than what they do, some people anyway. My advice to all young members is to join the band and get comrades together and have a bit of sport.
I hope so much, so deeply, that the band is not playing an elegy for a people on the defensive. I'd rather see it thrive before the jukebox spreads its shiny gospel to the people of the forest.
Well, you say nobody loves you.
It seems to me these forest teenagers are too gleefully conscious of the gap that rightly divides them from the narrow, restricted past, but more questionably from those elements in it I'm sure we still need. I can't help but feel sad for them, not about them, for this is the stamp of our New England.
Oh, you just don't like Elvis. Don't you know Elvis? What's wrong with him? No, I don't like Elvis as a person. He can't sing compared with anybody else. He can't sing. No, he cannot.
He's got a terrific voice.
No, terrific. I know. We were just those sexy movements chucked in for a bit of fun.
No, he can sing without all these sexy movements.
Yes, he can. I heard him singing last Saturday, Old Chet.
Oh, they can talk all right. But what they say might have been prepared for them by some publicity department. It contrasts strongly with the vitality and feeling of doing things I admire in our club.
Under the spreading chestnut tree there stood little Nell. Was she waiting for the moon? Was she blooming out?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Right, Mr. Arrogant, please, for the next song. This is one of our old favourites, The Old Apple Tree.
Here in Berry Hill Working Men's Club, there's nothing to suggest a lumpen, apathetic and manipulated society. Here, thank God, is that sense of community, of doing, and a vitality that still resists.
There's an old apple tree out in the orchard that will live forever in my memory. It reminds me of me pappy, who was handsome, young and happy when he planted this old apple tree. Oh, apple tree, apple tree, oh, apple tree. Yes, in life.
Here in this life you can belong and are an individual, no matter how stunted it may be. But how long will it continue? Harvey is the secretary, and this is what he thinks.
Oh, Saturday night's all right, but take the weekdays. You get 12, 10, perhaps 20. How many of the 20 are over 45? Perhaps 90%. Membership at this club now dropped 200 in about 7 years. Rate about 30 a year. If we have a jukebox in here, put threepence in, play what record you like. 2 walk in, 6 walk out. What can you do? We've got to look after our young members. We've got to look after the old members. But the majority today is the old members. And I think in 10, 15 years, this club, I'll be honest, bottom.
I dread that the village will splinter apart, all of us conscious of each other as much in terms of status and possessions as now, tonight, in terms of that which draws us together. And in the empty club on weeknights, I listen to the same old men talking amongst themselves in words not coined for them by commercial writers, but drawn out of their own lives and experiences, like old Mr. Hawkins, telling of when his friend had one of his pair of bloaters stolen by the landlady.
And the landlady came in out of the back kitchen somewhere, and the stem was going up, and the smoke was going up. And I said, "Isaac, what are you doing? You're burning that bloater." "Yes," he said, "I'll burn his bloody eyes out if he don't tell me where his mate's gone."
And Dad's friends, whom I once dismissed as rubbing in dirt, cling to an independence I now see as the most valuable quality of all.
Forster, we're inclined to be independent, and independence to me is sticking on your own and being your own boss, and knowing that if there's a pound in there, put it in your own pocket instead of putting it in somebody else's. I'm not independent in all things, mind, but I do feel a sense, well, I'm my own boss, and damn you, if I want to get off out with a gun and after a rabbit or a pheasant, well, I can go. I'm not obligated to anyone. At times like this, day after day, wet through, especially my back soaked right through, I cuss and grumble at it sometimes, but of course, a factory life wouldn't suit me at all. I couldn't bear to be in a factory. I just couldn't live there. I don't think I could exist there. And after all, with the water, if I can get across Tommy Cuppers or up the Globe and have my liquid refreshment at night, I'll put up with a gallon of this stuff next morning.
This may seem just a matter of drink and chatter, but the people here respond to each other in all the ways that nourish local pride and personal involvement. The concerts, parties, and even quarrels are real things, strongly individual, not that mass anonymity sociologists talk about so glibly. I respect this forest, like Jack Roberts.
I come from Wales, and I find that I've come to the Forest of Dean as fine a part as any part in Great Britain. They are independent, they won't be pushed around by anybody. And furthermore, they will help when their fellow comrade is down and out, they'll sell tickets and help him out of his difficulty.
And that's why we want our daughter to know something of this land between the two rivers, to see it before it's beaten down by the world of pop and you and none you, 17-inch screens and double your money. Only a quarter of a mile from my parents' house, Joy Ford has become a dead village. The chapel is closed and the people have gone. I don't want my child to know a forest as derelict as this. I don't want her to be blind to the strengths of this community, for then the forest will be a graveyard, not a fortress.